Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 4080 in Starfield. This one is the Founders Edition model of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power Up's GPU-Z. Recessable bar is also enabled, and over on the left, we're pairing it with the i5-13600K at 5.5 GHz and 32 GB of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM in dual channel. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright guys, first up I want you to try and guess what kind of settings we're playing on right now before I go into them. So we're getting around 80 frames per second. This is a very intensive area in this game, by the way, down into the 70s. And this is a $1,200 GPU. It already dipped into the 60s. Holy moly! So this is 1920 by 1080 resolution. It's just 1080p using the ultra graphics settings with no motion blur and no upscaling enabled. This is native resolution here. And in this video, I actually installed the DLSS 3.5 mod. It will still say FSR2 right here, but it's actually going to be running DLSS whenever we test some upscaling. And I also installed Reshade to use some adaptive sharpen as well with this because it looks way better than without it, especially while using upscalers. Also, the adaptive sharpening with Reshade doesn't impact FPS whatsoever. We're getting 77 frames right there. If I disable it, we're getting 78 frames. That's just margin of error stuff. 77 once again. We got some NPCs running around on the screen, so yeah. Anyway, I will leave that enabled because even at native resolution, it does look better with it enabled. So here we go. If you see the footage in this video being a little bit sharper than what you're seeing in your screen, it's just because of Reshade, but it doesn't impact FPS. Anyways, guys, let's gather some averages and 1% lows running around here at 1080p ultra settings. At least with a 4080, you can actually get 60 plus 100% of the time. Look at this. Over here, it's usually really intensive as well, and it drops to the high 60s, like 68, 69, which is perfect. And there is a little bit of a forest area in that direction, which I also want to take a look at, but let's just continue running around here for the time being. Basically, if you have an RTX 4080 and are playing on a 1080p monitor, I would have said that you are completely crazy when this GPU came out because it was a very capable card of like 4K, max settings, 100 FPS, 120 FPS, somewhere around that. But here in Starfield, it's just a 1080p, 70 to 80 FPS card, at least here in this area. Now, granted, in a lot of other areas and other planets, you are gonna see 100 plus FPS, 150 frames per second, way higher performance than here, but again, this is a benchmark video, so I am gonna test almost worst case scenario every single time. Anyways, let's try to enable some DLSS here. Again, it shows FSR2, but it's DLSS that we're using. It also looks way better than FSR in this game. From what I've seen, let's do 66% resolution scaling. It's 66%, right? Quality DLSS. It's either 66 or 67%. And yeah, okay, I can say that at the 66% mark, it's very similar to what we were seeing before. Alright, and we're getting a good few FPS more, like 10, I guess. Now we're up into the 90s more often, probably. But we might start being CPU bound in just a little bit, because the ultra settings in this game are extremely CPU intensive, as well as GPU intensive, of course. So you need a 13th gen CPU from Intel, or a 7800X3D from AMD to achieve these kinds of FPS. That's absolute bonkers. Now, with the 4070 Ti, I actually tested this with the 5800X3D. And that CPU, according to Hardware Unboxed, is only good for around like 70 FPS average, I think, and with 1% lows in the 50s. We saw a slight bottleneck at 1080p with the 4070 Ti, but most of the time in this area, it was GPU bound. That wouldn't have been the case if I tested it where Hardware Unboxed tested it, because that's way more CPU bound. But yeah, in my 4070 Ti video, some people are saying that we were CPU bound there. You just gotta take a look at the GPU utilization to see that we weren't in this particular area. 89 FPS average, it's basically the same experience. I would just play this on the native resolution if you're playing at 1080p. There's no need to use DLSS with the the 4080 here. Now, since most people won't really have 1080p monitors with the RTX 4080, I'm gonna bump it up to 1440p and visit the little forest area with a little bit more vegetation at that resolution instead of 1080p. First up, I'm gonna disable the upscaling, and now we're back to native resolution, and I'll need to restart the game to apply 1440p because they didn't bother to include a full screen mode. Great stuff. All right, here we go, guys. Reshade is again enabled with the adaptive sharpening, and we are now at 1440p, 2560 by 1440, using the same ultra settings with no motion blur. And by the way, the ultra settings preset in the game actually enables FSR2, or DLSS in this case, at 75% scaling. So what we've been testing here is ultra with 100% resolution scale, not really the ultra preset in itself, which is a little bit blurrier. Okay, here we are back at it again with 80 something FPS. Isn't that what we saw at 1080p? Like, what the hell? No, this is a little bit of a different area. We're not really inside of the big garden yet, this one right here. Okay, now we're starting to see it drop a little bit further, but you know, you don't lose that many FPS going from 1080p to 1440p, at least on higher end GPUs in this game. So again, 4080, you should definitely play at 1440p instead of 1080p. I was really worried that it would drop from 60 though, and it still might. It's dropping into the low 60s already. Look at that, 61, 62, 63. Is really intensive over here. 59, 58. It's not the end of the world, guys. This is a single-player title. You can play with a few drops here and there into the 50s, in my opinion. A lot of people have told me that I am being very picky as well, because the game is absolutely playable even at 30 or 40 frames per second. And it kind of is. Actually, yesterday, I installed the game on a mini PC with the Radeon 780M integrated graphics, and I didn't even see the FPS that I was getting, but I was playing the game at 1080p with around 60% resolution scale, and it was fine. I bet that it actually did drop into the 20s sometimes, but the fact that the game doesn't stutter at all is what matters the most for it to be playable. I always say that I'd rather have a lower FPS experience than a stuttery mess at 100 plus frames per second all of the time. In this direction, there is going to be a little bit of more vegetation. Again, it's probably not the most GPU intensive area in the entire game. We got so many planets to explore, but here we are. This is where I chose to test this game. It's a good balance between CPU and GPU performance as well, because we got a lot of NPCs in the city. It's the most intensive city itself for a GPU to render, because it got trees. So yeah, I feel like it's a good area to benchmark the game at. Yeah, I highly doubt that this is going to be more intensive than where we've been to already. Dropping down into the 60s though. But we've already seen 58 back there, so I think it's just not really worth testing it here, right? Might as well go back, maybe shoot some people as well. Yeah, that should be fun. I thought there was gonna be a bigger difference in this area compared to the one back there. All right, back to the 60s. There we go. Perfect stuff. Let's go ahead and enable some DLSS, okay? And now I'm gonna do like 75%. With 75% resolution scaling, yeah, it's really close to native. You know what? Maybe 80% is the best choice for the DLSS in this one. Also, if you want to see that it's actually DLSS and not FSR, compare the 50% resolution scaling to my other videos. It looks way better. Especially at 1080p 50%, you can clearly tell that it's DLSS instead of FSR. But all right, let's go back to 80% here. This should be enough to put us above 60 FPS the entire time. I'm hoping so, at least. VRAM usage is at around 6 gigabytes. This game is not a VRAM intensive title whatsoever. Remember over here, it got like 59 FPS. Now it's getting 69 FPS. Oh, now it's dropping to the low 60s. Jesus, dude. Even with 80% resolution scale at 1440p, it is barely above 60 FPS the entire time. So yeah, I guess if you want basically the same visuals as native res, this is the way to go. 80% DLSS 3.5 will look really good. Very, very similar to native, indeed. and it's gonna get you like 5 to 10 more frames per second than native. But let's try it out at 66%, which is the quality DLSS. It's actually 66.6%. And by the way, the dynamic resolution is enabled, and it's been enabled every time we are testing upscaling in this video, but it only kicks in whenever you are below 30 frames per second. So it does absolutely nothing at the FPS that we're seeing right here. So DLSS quality, this is it, 70 something frames per second. Pretty okay, you know, it's a good bump over the 80% that we saw previously. And you know what, on a native 1440p monitor, you won't really be able to tell much of a difference. So maybe this is the way, my friends. Okay, should we start shooting people? I'm gonna shoot you in the foot. Come on, almost hit that. Oh, there we go, we got the security after us finally. Now it's gonna get a little bit more chaotic, my friends. We're seeing some action. Doesn't really drop our FPS by much, thankfully. What do you want? You're level 1. Do you think you can do anything against me, my friend? Have a bullet to the ass. There we go. So yeah, you can see that with DLSS on quality, it's never gonna drop from 60 frames per second in this particular area of the game, so it won't drop in like 99 or 98% of the game either. Just gonna check it out right here. And it drops to 70, probably like 69 sometimes. It doesn't really matter. Alright, it is going to be a very buttery smooth experience all the way throughout at these settings. This is how I'd play on a 1440p monitor with the RTX 4080. Now, what about that huge 4K resolution, my friends? This is 3840 by 2160 resolution using the ultra settings, native res. And we're getting 40-ish frames per second. That's totally expected because my 4070 Ti got around like 30-35 frames on average. This one being a bit faster, well, it gets 40, like 35 plus, I would say, all of the time. Let me just check it out from up there once again. And over here it's dropping slightly from 40 frames per second. Yeah, okay, it's not amazing, you know. I wish we could have more FPS than these, but I think with DLSS enabled, it's gonna be okay, my friends. Anyway, I saw some people telling me that the reason why I was getting 30-ish FPS at 4K with the 4070 Ti was because of the 5800X 3D bottlenecking it like crazy, even at 4K resolution, even with 99% GPU usage. It's like, of course, it's the CPU that's bottlenecking. And I was like, no, if it's at 99% GPU usage, it's not a CPU bottleneck. Come on, what the hell are you talking about? And they're like, no, you're just stupid. You don't know how these things work. I've been benchmarking video games for like, what, 8 years already? Maybe 9? That's not how it works. Anyways, it doesn't matter. All right, so let's use FSR, well, DLSS at 66% scaling here. And at 4K resolution, quality DLSS usually looks amazing. And this is no exception. This looks exactly like native res, maybe slightly softer. But again, we're running the reshade, which sharpens up the image. I don't feel like it's soft at all. Maybe native resolution was slightly over-sharpened because reshade was already enabled at that res and it wasn't needed. But yeah, this looks really, really nice at the moment, guys. And it's getting close to 60 FPS on average. It's still not a great experience. If this had frame generation, it would be amazing, actually. I just loaded another game save because I want the NPCs to be walking around here. Look at that. It's much more populated, much more alive. You need that because the plants barely move. Some of them don't even move like these. Anyways, over here, getting around 60 FPS once again. It might be slightly less intensive, actually, with all of the NPCs here, instead of guards shooting at you. I would much rather have 60 plus FPS all of the time, so I'm gonna try it with 50% resolution scaling to see if it's possible without decreasing the quality too high. And at 50%, wow. This is where DLSS is shining the most, my friends, compared to FSR. This is looking super good, because it's DLSS 3.5. FSR looked blurry as heck, and lacking some detail as well, because essentially we're now playing at 1080p internal resolution and upscaling it to 4K. But DLSS is doing such a better job at that than FSR did here in Starfield. I don't understand. I think I saw somewhere that Bethesda was like, why include DLSS if FSR performs the same and looks the same? It clearly does not look the same. This is a lot, but I would not mind whatsoever to play this at 50% resolution scale. And it now performs above 60 FPS the entire time. Look at this. Even here, where we saw it drop the most, it's at 64. That's great. This is how I'd play this game with the RTX 4080 for sure. Alright guys, lastly, we're playing at the 8K resolution, my friends. She's saying no. She's very mad at us. It's like, nope. You can see right here that we're playing at 7680 by 4320, and by the FPS it's also very apparent, right? Let's do some FSR2 using 50% render resolution. That should run the game internally at 4K. You know what? It's surprisingly close to native 4K resolution. It's still got that upscaling going on, but in terms of graphics, it's probably a little bit better looking, a little bit sharper than native res at 4K. And in terms of FPS, it's super similar as well. And it gets 30 plus FPS all of the time at Ultra. Well, not all of the time. It's probably going to drop here and there, actually. Let's try it out on low. Okay. Low settings preset, DLSS on 50%. And apparently going from ultra to low with 50% resolution scaling at 8K only gave us about 15 frames per second, maybe 10 frames per second. That's so weird. It also looks very similar to Ultra. Let's try native res and low settings. 20s. Alright, that's a little bit more smooth. Oh my god, what the hell is happening at this? Oh my god, did you see that? It took so long to load all of the people there. Holy crap, everything is blinking. Look at that again. Oh, if I look up here, you can only see the heads of the people there. That is the weirdest thing of all. This game clearly wasn't made with 8K in mind. It doesn't even show up on the resolution. So, yeah. Oh my god, we managed to break the game even further. Look at that. Jesus. Alright, my friends, that's been it for this one. Of course, 8K was just for a little bit of fun there at the end. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Sorry about my voice today. It's a little bit weirder because I'm getting a little bit sick right now, but it's all good. I'm going to be back very soon with another video. Thanks for watching again. Love you all. Bye-bye.